The move-in. James and Lisa had been searching for their dream home for months when they stumbled upon the Blackwood house, a grand yet neglected Victorian mansion sitting alone at the edge of a dense forest. The price was shockingly low, far below market value, but the realtor was eager to close the deal. People in town say the house has history, the realtor admitted reluctantly when Lisa pressed her about the low cost. Strange things, unexplained events. Some folks believe it's haunted. James scoffed. He was a rational man, a skeptic who dismissed ghost stories as nonsense. Lisa, though more open-minded, loved the eerie charm of the house. If it's haunted, at least we won't have annoying neighbors, she joked. 3 weeks later, they moved in. Chapter 2. The First Signs. The first few days were uneventful. The house was drafty, the old pipes groaned at night, and the floorboards creaked under their feet. James spent hours fixing the electricity and sealing gaps in the windows, while Lisa decorated the rooms, eager to turn the old house into a home. But then the disturbances began. At first, it was small things. Objects moved from their original spots. Doors found open after being shut. Faint tapping sounds in the walls at odd hours. They dismissed it as their own forgetfulness, until one night when Lisa awoke to the sound of whispering. It was distant, like a hushed conversation happening in another room. She nudged James awake, but by the time he sat up, the house was silent. "It's probably the wind," he muttered sleepily, rolling over. Lisa wasn't so sure. Chapter 3. The Poltergeist. Awakens. A week later, James came home to find Lisa standing in the kitchen, staring at the cabinets with a pale face. "What's wrong?" he asked. Without a word, she pointed. The kitchen cabinets were all wide open. Every single one. "Did you do this?" she asked in a tight voice. "No," he said firmly. They both stood in silence, staring at the gaping cabinets. James tried to rationalize it. Maybe a draft, maybe faulty hinges. But he couldn't explain why the chairs had also been moved, arranged in a neat circle in the middle of the kitchen. That night, the knocking returned, louder this time, insistent, echoing through the house in random patterns. Lisa clutched James's arm. "It's not pipes, James! It's coming from inside the walls!" Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heavy footsteps echoing from the attic. James grabbed a flashlight and stormed upstairs, determined to prove it was just an animal. But when he reached the attic door, he found it locked from the inside. And then, as he stood there, a deep thud hit the other side of the door. Lisa screamed from downstairs. James turned and ran back to find her in the living room, pointing at the ceiling. The chandelier was swaying violently, as if an unseen force had grabbed it. Then suddenly it stopped, dead still. They barely slept that night. Chapter 4. The Shadow in the Hall. The following night, Lisa woke up again to whispers. Only this time they were inside the bedroom. She sat up, her breath caught in her throat. In the dim glow of the moonlight filtering through the curtains, she saw something move. A shadow, tall and twisted, stood in the doorway. It was darker than the surrounding night, its shape indistinct, yet watching. Lisa wanted to scream, but fear strangled her voice. James stirred beside her. The moment he opened his eyes, the shadow darted away, faster than humanly possible. James leapt from the bed, grabbed the flashlight, and rushed to the hall. It was empty, but the floorboards at the end of the corridor were still creaking, as if something had just been there. Chapter 5. The haunting escalates. The poltergeist's activity worsened. Furniture moved by itself. Plates flew off the shelves. The tapping inside the walls turned into scratching, clawing sounds that echoed through the house at night. One evening, as James was setting the table for dinner, he turned to grab a glass, only to see a knife fly from the counter and stab itself into the wooden table with a sickening thud. Lisa refused to stay in the house alone. They considered leaving, but James was stubborn. "We're not being chased out by some old house," he insisted. But then the voices started. They heard them through the vents, through the walls, even through the radio when it was turned off. Murmurs, laughs, sometimes screams. One night, Lisa went to take a shower. When she reached for the shampoo, the bathroom mirror shattered, not from a crack, but as if something had punched it from the inside. A single word was scratched into the glass. "Get out." Chapter 6. The final night. The night they left was the worst. James was in his study when the temperature suddenly dropped. His breath came out in mist. The lamp flickered, then exploded in a burst of sparks. Then came the growl, a deep, guttural snarl that resonated from the walls. Lisa screamed from the bedroom. James ran upstairs and froze in the doorway. Lisa was on the bed, levitating. Her eyes were wide with terror, her mouth open in a silent scream. Claw marks appeared on her arms. Invisible hands, tearing at her skin. James lunged for her, grabbing her shoulders and pulling her down. The moment he touched her, a shadow burst from her body, slamming into the wall so hard it cracked the plaster. Then the house shook. Pictures fell. Windows shattered. A monstrous howl filled the air. James grabbed Lisa and ran. They never looked back. Epilogue. They sold the house immediately, not caring about the financial loss. The new owners lasted 1 week before abandoning it. The Blackwood house remains empty to this day. Those who dare to step inside say they can still hear the whispers, and sometimes, late at night, they see a shadow watching from the window, waiting for the next occupants.